America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We are back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And finally, after all the hype, all of which was self-serving and most of it thoroughly distasteful, 2 men will step into a ring in Las Vegas tomorrow night and settle absolutely nothing. Booger McFarland is in for Golic today, and here is the question, Booger, that I have for you is, I guess it's really 2 questions. 1, are you going to buy the fight as I am? And B, do you feel like an idiot for doing it as I do?
Well, no, I'm not going to buy the fight. I'm going to be a little bit smarter than you. I'm going to go over a friend's house. They're buying the fight and they're cooking. And they invited me and my wife, so we're going over to enjoy their fight on their TV with their ribs and chicken.
Fair enough. That's well played in every conceivable way. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you were like me and had no friends, and you were thus quarantined to your own home. Would you buy the fight? Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, everything inside of me says this thing is it's a sham, it's a joke. They're making a mockery of at least one, if not 2 sports, and they are 2 people that are impossible to root for. Conor McGregor has done the impossible over the last few months, and that is that he has made me root for Floyd Mayweather, which I didn't think I had it in me to do. And yet I'm going to watch it. There was something about this that has drawn me in a way that I cannot explain, in a way that I think will make sense to anyone but myself. But I can't not watch this.
You know, Green, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's where it falls in the sports calendar. I think right now NFL football hasn't started. The big weekend in college football is next weekend. So it falls at a time on the sports calendar when it's very easy to look at and very easy to watch. And then number 2, it's always about the what if, man. What if Conor McGregor somehow lands a punch? What if Floyd is slipping on his game? Just what if? I think back to some of the great sporting events that we missed or I missed just because you say, yeah, I know what's going to happen in that one. Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas.
Right.
Okay. The U.S. against the Soviet Union. You say, yeah, I already know what's going to happen. And you miss something that's absolutely historically great. What if it happens? Now, I agree with you. I think it's going to be just a snore fest. I think Mayweather is the greatest fighter of this time. I think he's a guy who he's made a living on defense. He's been a defensive fighter his entire career. And all the examples that he's given us shows us that that's not going to change against Conor McGregor. But what if, though? What if? I think the what if is the one thing that has us wanting to watch this fight.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to argue against myself because the what if is, if McGregor beats him, what exactly does that even mean? This isn't McGregor losing to Pacquiao in his prime. This isn't McGregor losing to De La Hoya in his prime. This is Mayweather, coming out of retirement for a payday, and everyone knows it's that, spending the entire week, from what I'm reading, in strip clubs. This is how he's preparing for this fight. Cashing a guaranteed $300 million check, it sounds to me like, on the low end. And then if he didn't really take it seriously and loses to Conor McGregor, what does it really mean? I don't know. I don't know that it actually means anything. Is it Buster Douglas beating Tyson? Is it the U.S. beating the Soviet Union? Is it really an upset on that level? Because I don't think it has the historical ramifications that those things do.
No, it doesn't, because you don't have 2 guys that are in the same discipline. But, Greeny, what it is, it's Floyd Mayweather, the greatest fighter of our time. Like, he's the greatest fighter I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's in his discipline. This is boxing. Okay, forget how big the gloves are, whether they're 6 ounces, 8 ounces, like whatever the gloves are going to be. This is the greatest fighter of our time in his discipline, in his house, in his backyard in Las Vegas. And now you're taking on a guy from a different sport, a sport that's trying to take over your sport. Okay, UFC, MMA, like that whole mixed martial arts thing. There was a point in time where Dana White was basically trying to push boxing out of the way. So to me, it's a little bit bigger than just saying, hey, here's Floyd Mayweather, the greatest fighter of our time, against Conor McGregor. And these are 2 despicable human beings. This is a situation where a sport in which Dana White is trying to push to the forefront, okay, mixed martial arts, UFC, against boxing, against the greatest guy that we've seen. So to me, there's a historical preference from that avenue that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about.
That's a good point. I do. And so you could say that Floyd Mayweather is fighting for the sanctity of boxing. And the only thing I'd say about that is he doesn't care. I don't believe for a second that Floyd Mayweather cares about anything beyond his own money and his own self, and that's fine. But I do agree that will, like I heard Teddy Atlas talking about this, and that's a person who I'll listen to on the subject. Teddy Atlas saying he's a little bit afraid because it would of what it would do to boxing and the reputation or whatever of boxing if Floyd were to lose this fight, which I think there is practically no chance. You know, you were on one of the great defenses of all time. You won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers in 2003?
Yes.
2003.
Yep.
And so if your 2003 Buccaneers had played the 2000 Ravens, right? So they had a great defense. You had a great defense. They didn't have a whole lot of offense. You didn't have a whole lot of offense. What would have happened in that game?
Well, I think it would have been a snore fest. It would have been entertaining.
Don't tell Golick that. Golick would have said it would have been the greatest game of all time. These defensive guys would have loved it. It would have been 6-3.
But from an entertainment standpoint, if you don't like defense, it'll be boring to you. One of the greatest games I've ever seen is the LSU-Alabama game that was 9-6, I believe. That was not a touchdown score. Everyone said, oh, this is terrible. This is bad ratings. It was one of the greatest games you've ever seen because if you understand the intricacies of how defensive football is played, it was outstanding. The talent level was way up. And I think that when you look at it at two guys that are two teams that are defensive teams, you have to kind of be an expert of what you're watching. You have to be an expert of football or an expert of boxing. A lot of people don't appreciate Floyd Mayweather, okay? He's one of the great fighters we've ever seen. He just does it in a different way. He's not a knockout artist. He's flamboyant. He could have been a wide receiver because two things matter to Floyd, him and his money.
Exactly.
Those are the two things that matter to him. But I appreciate him because it takes a lot to be technically and fundamentally sound in your craft and to go out there 49 times, Greeny. He's rarely been hit. I can only think of one time that he really was in trouble in the ring. Zab Judah had him in trouble in the ring. Somebody as quick as him, a lefty, had him in trouble. Zab was not in shape that day. Zab couldn't finish. I don't think McGregor is anywhere near what Zab Judah was, which is why a lot of people think this is going to be just kind of, hey, go get some wings. Is it over yet? No, let's go back. Bring the ribs, too. Like, everybody's going to be having a good time, and maybe the fight will be on in the background.
Fight's going to be on pretty late. You're eating that late? I mean, you're eating ribs at like 11:30 at night?
Here's the deal, Greeny. What you have to do is you have to understand when the end is, and then you start at the beginning. So I know what time this fight is going to be. So my tea time is not going to be at 8 a.m.
Gotcha.
I'm going to push the tea time. I'm going to push the tea on Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to push the tea time up a little bit. So instead of being at 8 on Saturday, it's probably going to be at around 11. So the day will just get pushed back, okay? Mm-hmm. The lunch portion of the snack will be the early dinner at 7. And then the real dinner will happen during the fight at around 11:30.
You are just a beautiful person. You really are. Somehow I manage always to be sitting in here with people who can explain food to me in a way that I couldn't possibly comprehend. All right, let's go through off the top here. Let's go through the sports from last night, and then we'll look ahead a little more to the fight. I got a lot for you in the hopper today, but the Dodgers picked up their 90th win of the season yesterday in their 126th game, tied for the fourth fastest in the World Series era. Now, there have been a lot of injuries and all that kind of stuff. Right now, because Booger is a baseball fan, do you believe the Dodgers will back this thing up as the Cubs did a year ago and win the World Series?
No, I like the Washington Nationals. I think when you look at the pitching staff, obviously the Dodgers making the trade for Yu Darvish, everybody's giving them a heads up depending on the health of Clayton Kershaw. But I just feel like it's the Washington Nationals' time, man. Strasburg, Scherzer, those guys. I like the Washington Nationals.
Off the top.
Meanwhile, for the second time this year, Chris Sale got bombed by the Indians. The Red Sox and Indians are very likely to meet up in the first round of the American League playoffs. And Chris Sale, who will probably win the Cy Young Award, has a 2.32 ERA against everybody else, has an ERA of over 14.5 against the Indians. So how do we explain that? It's two starts. So do you chalk that up to just 2 bad days, or do you look at that and say, Booger, they've got his number. They take game one of a playoff series in a huge win against Chris Sale.
Well, Green, I'll take it a step further. In his career, Sale is 5-8 with a 4.78 ERA against the Indians. That's his highest ERA against any team that he's faced 3 or more times in his career. So maybe it is just the Indians. I know one thing. If Boston is going to go where they want to go, which is the World Series championship, Sale and David Price have to be at their optimal level.
Off the top.
What else have we got? In the year of the home run, there were several big ones hit yesterday, including Giancarlo Stanton. He's 3 home runs away from the 9th season in baseball history with 50 home runs before the month of September begins. That statistic courtesy of the Elias Sports Bureau. How closely are you watching Giancarlo Stanton, and how interested are you in whether he gets to 60?
I am, and I'm trying to pay as much attention to Giancarlo as we paid to Aaron Judge, because Giancarlo has been doing for the last several years what Aaron Judge did for half a season. And if we're going to give Aaron Judge an all hail and all rise, you best be paying attention to what that young man is doing down in Miami, because he's been doing it a lot longer than Aaron Judge.
Off the top.
Well said. All right, Cam Newton played last night. Played one series for the Panthers, but it was significant in that it was his first preseason action, and it was significant in that they went 10 plays and 75 yards, and he threw a touchdown to Kelvin Benjamin. Did you get to see Cam last night?
Yes, I've been very critical of Cam. I think this is a huge year for Cam Newton. Okay, last year was a disappointment. The year before, he was the MVP. They went out, they've got him another weapon in Christian McCaffrey. What can Cam Newton do now to improve 2 things? Because I believe 2 things make a quarterback, Greeny: decision-making and accuracy. And Cam Newton has struggled with both in his career.
Off the top.
Much more football as we continue, but finally the wagers are rolling in on Floyd Mayweather. If you heard earlier this week, we had Jay Root on from MGM telling us that Vegas had an enormous liability if McGregor were to win, because they just couldn't find anybody to bet on Floyd at the numbers that he was sitting at. Well, now they got 2 huge bets in Vegas, $1 million bet and a $1.2 million bet on Floyd. So my question to you is, if you had to bet an amount of money on this fight that mattered to you, would you even consider putting it on anything besides Mayweather winning in the first 3 rounds? That's where the shortest odds are. If I told you right now you could get good odds on McGregor still to be standing when the 4th round starts, would you take it?
Yes, because Floyd.
4th round?
Yes, because Mayweather has never been a guy who wanted to come out and finish you early. A defensive fighter allows the fight to come to him. And this is what's going to be kind of tricky about this fight, Greeny, is because Floyd Mayweather is one of the best counterpunchers out there. Where in order to counterpunch, the other guy has to come at you. Is Conor going to do that? Like, we don't know what kind of boxing style Conor has because we've never seen it. So that'll be an interesting part of this fight.
Off the top.
And that is Off the Top with us, Mike and Mike. Booger McFarland's in for the big fella today. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, your business, or your recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. But before, you know what, let me get to the fight here, and then I'll bring in the fact that, stunningly, you are a man who lives in Florida, and yet you seem to be afraid of water in ways
Not
that
afraid.
You're afraid of water.
No, I just like to be prepared when water's around.
Here's the thing. All right, so now we're going to go there. So I've joined this new golf club, and I cannot wait to bring Booger there.
Yes.
And it's the Bayonne Golf Club in Bayonne, New Jersey. And the way that you get there from New York is you take you on a little ferry.
Yeah.
They have a boat that takes you there, which has become a very common way for people who live in New York or who live in New Jersey and work in New York to go back and forth rather than drive through a tunnel or over a bridge. They have all these boats going across the Hudson now, which is great. And so I'm telling them about this great boat we're going to take. We're going to go over there. We're going to play. We're going to have a great time. And your first question to me was?
Do they have life jackets?
Life jackets. It's a ferry. It's a ferry.
It's on water.
We're not going like on a little putt-putt boat. It's not going to be like you and me, and I'm not pulling on the thing.
Really?
There's going to be a guy driving it. There's a bar on the boat. I mean, this is what we're talking about.
Here's the one thing I can guarantee you. This little ferry is not as big as the Titanic was.
No, I understand
The Titanic went down, Greeny.
In the middle of the ocean.
No,
We're in the Hudson River.
No, the Titanic went down.
I got that.
And so I'm telling you that no matter how large or small the apparatus is, it can go down.
Here's what I'm telling you. My man Tommy isn't sinking to the bottom of the Hudson River, and if he did, we could see it. It's the Hudson River.
Listen.
Okay? You could swim from one end to the other in like 10 minutes.
Stop right there.
Did you see what was the name of the movie, Sully?
Yes.
That's the body of water I'm talking about.
I understand that. Stop right there. So you said one thing that's, although I can survive, swimming is a little iffy. I'm a survivor.
Swimming is the challenge.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm not afraid of the water. Like, I get in the water. I have a pool in my backyard.
Yeah.
My pool is 6 feet deep, so I can go to the bottom and stand up. When you custom build a pool, you build the pool to your specification.
It's a wading pool, basically.
No, it's 6 feet deep. I go to the bottom and stand up. And my kid's like, Daddy, you can't swim. I was like, no. It's like, why are you in the pool? So I had to explain to them how I can get in the pool and play with them all day, and we can have some fun.
So that's good. Obviously, water safety is extremely important.
Yes.
But let me ask you this. You're getting on a ferry. To be clear, this is a large boat. It is not a small boat.
Okay.
And your first question is, where are the life jackets?
Yeah, where are the life jackets?
When you get on an airplane, is your first question, where are the parachutes?
No, because I know the lady is going to tell me they're under the seat, and then the oxygen mask.
I don't know where the parachutes are. There's no parachute under your seat.
Not necessarily a parachute,
your
but
seat
life
is
jacket.
a flotation device.
Whatever, Greeny. But I know where the things that are going to help me survive. I know where they are.
If we have to jump out of this plane in the middle of the flight, there are probably parachutes. I don't know where they are.
I mean, the plane has flotation devices. I'm assuming the boat has them also. So
Yeah.
It's not a crazy question for me to ask, where are the things that are going to help me survive if we have a situation that we are not looking for?
I'm not suggesting that it isn't a normal thing for you to want
Yes.
to know. I am suggesting that when I'm telling you with excitement about my new golf club
And I love
how
it.
we're going to go over there and
Yes.
play, your first question is, do they have life jackets on the ferry boat? That being your first question,
Yes.
before you ask me about the fairways, the greens, or anything
Well,
else, that strikes me as a tad on the afraid side.
I know you're a man of great taste, so I have no idea that the fairways are going to be pristine. The golf course is going to be lovely. The
you're
greens
eating
are going to
dinner off
roll.
the greens, yeah.
The greens are going to roll 13, and we're going to play the new TP5 and TP5X. I have no doubt about all of that.
Correct.
But the one thing I am concerned before we get, like, if we never arrive to this Bayonne Golf Club, we can't play it.
I understand.
I have to arrive safely, which is why I'm asking about the boat.
If somehow the ferry sinks in the middle of the Hudson River with the Statue of Liberty right above us.
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll be just fine. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. We're going to have to get some sort of psychiatric assistance from Mr. McFarland today. And we will also have on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line among our guests, DeMaurice Smith, the Executive Director of the NFL Players Association. There are a bunch of things I want to ask him about. Primarily, I saw a bunch of people debating yesterday whether or not there is any legal remedy for Colin Kaepernick, whichever side of the Kaepernick debate you fall on.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this. I thought your tweet yesterday was beautiful, actually. I really did. Let's actually get into that a little bit in a minute. But whatever side of the Kaepernick debate you fall on, I am fascinated by the question of, is there a legal remedy for him? I believe that what we have here, this is my own personal opinion, is 32 individual blackballings. I believe he's being blackballed. He is not being blackballed by 32 teams. He's being blackballed by 30. He's being blackballed 32 times, once apiece, which is different. So if I thought the owners had gotten together and all like taken an oath, and like pricked their fingers and signed it in blood and said none of us are going to sign him, then I could see where there would be a legal remedy. If each individual owner is just deciding I don't want him on my team because I don't like what he did or because I don't feel like inviting whatever controversy it's going to bring or whatever the reason is, I'm not expert enough to know if he has any legal remedy or not. And I've seen a bunch of people arguing on Twitter, both some saying yes and some saying no. So I don't know what the reality of it is. But D. Smith will know because he is a lawyer and he runs the union. So I am really looking forward to asking him that.
Well, I don't think there are any legal ramifications because you have 32 clubs that have the right to pick and choose who they hire. Like, this isn't a situation where legally, like, they are doing something they are not allowing him to.
That's what I'm asking you. I don't know because they have the plausible deniability that he's not so good at football,
right?
That if he was Aaron Rodgers or something. But here's the thing: they cannot argue. No one could argue that there are however many quarterbacks there currently are employed by the National Football League.
Probably around 90.
No one could argue that he's the 91st best quarterback in the world. That's not a real argument.
Correct.
So the thing is, they couldn't not let him play because he was black. They couldn't not let him play because he was gay if he was gay. They couldn't not let him play for a lot of other reasons, right? There are laws prohibiting that even in a private enterprise. So I don't know where that ends. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be, so I don't have the answer to that. But there certainly are some employment laws that would protect him. So my question is, in this case, where they seem to find him, I'm not even sure what word it is.
Can you prove that he's being discriminated?
Correct. That's the question. Can the union do anything?
No.
I don't know. No. I mean, my logical sense says I agree with you completely. Right. But if that is the case, then the union can't do anything.
Here's where we are on Colin Kaepernick, in my opinion. I think we've gotten to a point where, at its height, everyone was paying attention and everyone wanted to see where it went. Then it went through a long period of time where there were a couple of opportunities out there and no one signed him, namely the Baltimore, namely Seattle. Two opportunities where there was a little buzz that Colin Kaepernick may get signed by Seattle, may get signed by Baltimore, and nothing happened. And then something very interesting happened. You had the first really owner come out and really admit, okay, Steve Bisciotti admitted, is like, I'm torn. He even asked for prayer. Like, he was that torn, and I thought it was a very vulnerable moment. Now, I didn't agree with him. Now, you're a guy who's running a multi-billion-dollar organization, and you make decisions every day. Why do you need prayer about this one? So I thought on one hand he was trying to save face publicly, but he was one of the first ones to openly talk about it. And I think we reached that point. Now we're at a point right now where when you hear Shady McCoy talk, I think Shady is very sincere. When Shady talked about it will be a distraction. Because here's where you are right now. If you don't need him on your team, the moment even if you need him, the moment he shows up, everyone's got to start to answer the question. And I'm not a big distraction guy. I think distractions for professionals are really an excuse. You're a professional. You're a grown man. Deal with it. So that's the way I believe in distractions. But I think Shady McCoy brings a point. If you do not want to deal with the Colin Kaepernick circus, it's not a distraction. It's just an added responsibility that his new team would have. And I think some of the guys have enough on their plate right now that they'd rather not deal with that. And that's not anything against Colin Kaepernick. I think we've reached a time right now where guys are like, I'm not going to say they're tired of it, but guys are like, we've been doing this for 6 months. Okay, let's go play football right now. It's obvious what the NFL owners are doing. They don't want him on their team. That's obvious, okay? I don't think it's 31 blackballings or 32. I think for different reasons, different teams have said, you know what, he's not a good fit for us. Okay, New England's reason may be different than Jacksonville's reason. That's different than the New York Jets' reason. But everybody has their reason. And I think people right now are just at a point where saying, you know what, we know he's not wanted. The football players are just saying, let's go play football. Some of the activists are even getting tired of it.
Listen, I don't know if they are or they aren't, but what I do know is that if he wants to play football, he's not being given the opportunity to do it. And I'm really curious to know whether the union that represents him has any way
do you think
of
that's
fighting
going to
for
change?
him. No,
Is
I
that
don't
gonna
think
change?
so.
Exactly.
No, I don't. But that's why we'll ask him,
Right.
what can you do? The answer I don't think he'll say the answer is nothing, that we can do nothing. But I'm curious to hear what he thinks they can do, because I don't know what the answer to the question is. I think the union can do almost nothing. But we'll find out. That's the reason to have him on.
And on top of that, with D. Smith has got some other things that he's got to deal with, because there are rumblings amongst the players, both past and present, that this new election that's coming up, this guy Cyrus Mary, there are a lot of rumblings that, like, D. Smith he's going to have his hands full with this election, especially if it gets to that point.
Yeah, we're a long way away from the next collective bargaining agreement. So, yeah, there's that on the table as well. So we'll do all that as the morning continues. We got Booger here. We're going to make sure that he's, comfortable on any boat or any sort of aquatic device that we can come up with.
Floaties would be nice, too, if
we'll
they have
get you a pair of floaties. I can't imagine how big the floaties would have to be. I don't have enough air in me to blow up the floaties that would keep you afloat for any significant period of time.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Booger McFarland is here. Been looking forward to this. It's been a busy summer for the National Football League and a lot of their players and everything as we get set to start a new season. There are some big stories on the table, and here to shed some light on some of those is the executive director of the NFL Players Association, DeMaurice Smith. D, it's Greeny and Booger today. How are you this morning?
Hey, Greeny, Booger. How are you guys? I'm great. I'm in Hartford, Connecticut. Can almost see you from here to drop my son off at college, and it's all good.
That's got to be tough. I mean, I'm 2 years away from that with my oldest, and I can't even fathom. Is this your oldest?
This is my youngest. So he's up here. He's on a lacrosse scholarship. He's the baby. Okay, it's a little rough. I'm not going to lie.
It's just a little rough. I mean, I can't. I have a lot of friends who are doing it this week. Anyway, listen, the best to you and your family first and foremost, of course. A couple of different things I wanted to get into this morning. And let's start with Colin Kaepernick, because everyone is aware of the issues that surround him. But I am not expert enough to fully understand what, if any, legal remedies there may be. So I guess it's a two-part question. Can the union help Colin Kaepernick try to get a job? And if so, how?
Two-part question, very short show. The reality is there's always legal options. They depend heavily on the facts, and they depend on, whether this is something that the player and his union want to pursue. And we've remained in touch with Colin's representatives, and that's an ongoing conversation. We've respected their decisions. We'll continue to work with them. If and when he wants to pursue other things, we will look at those things and give him the best advice that we can have.
D, as it pertains to Ezekiel Elliott, obviously the appeals hearing is coming up here pretty quick. What are you guys expecting to come from that, and do you think that there's an opportunity that the suspension may be reduced?
Well, we don't ever shy away from representing the interest of our members. It's our duty, and it's something that I take seriously, and I think that it's our job, just like anybody else in a legal proceeding, that they have lawyers that vigorously represent them. So we will head into the hearing. I understand that there was a ruling from the person who's overseeing the hearing early this morning. I'll take a look at it, consult with our lawyers. But look, this is not a perfect system, and one of the reasons that for the third year in a row we're entering the season talking about something other than football is because we don't have a neutral arbitrator like we had in the Ray Rice case. We don't have a collectively bargained discipline system where it's transparent. And I think anytime you have a system that's overseen by a former lawyer from the National Football League and a system that's not transparent, you're going to necessarily end up talking about issues on Mike and Mike about that rather than talking about the start of the season.
Yeah, that is the reality. We get it. And this one turned kind of ugly. You're obviously aware of the comments that the league made suggesting that your side had made attempts to discredit Ezekiel Elliott's accuser. They called that shameful. How do you respond to those?
Greeny, I think we did.
Yeah.
And I think we responded, probably around, 12, 13 on a 10 scale.
Yeah.
I've been a prosecutor for a long time and prosecuted rape cases. And I never thought that the lawyer on the other side who was doing his job or her job representing their client was engaging in some sort of shameful act. It was factually not true. It was a new low, or at least one of several new lows for the league, and we responded the way that we did. But look, I mean, we have a system that the owners have decided that they didn't want to collectively bargain. The irony is the owners that specifically blocked neutral arbitration in 2011 had cases involving their players later on. But when you don't have a collectively bargained system, when a system isn't transparent, and when the hearing is going to be overseen by a lawyer from the National Football League, you end up in public fights and you end up talking about all sorts of issues instead of focusing on, what should be an exciting time and will be an exciting time about the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and fans will probably move on to that. D. Smith is with us here, but when you've got that, you called it a new light. It felt really bad in that instant between the two of you, the two sides, and then you talking about a work stoppage being a virtual certainty, and Eric Winston is talking, and with some comments that I think were largely misinterpreted, but talking about the future of the league in ways that made people a little bit uncomfortable. It feels from the outside as though this relationship has never been worse between the players and the owners. Would you say that is a fair characterization?
No, I wouldn't say that, only because, Boogers has been around and you've been around for a very long time. You're talking about a group of people that did lock us out in 2011, right? You're talking about the National Football League was the one who had a rheumatologist who led the concussion research for years. We know that it took a group of former players to sue the National Football League over head injuries. So I'm not sure that it would be fair to say that the tensions have never been worse. This is the reality of two extremely strong organizations that have two separate constituencies. Roger represents the owners. I represent the players. But at the end of the day, are we ever going to shy away from representing the interest of our players and their families? And the answer is no. So when you have to sue the National Football League to make sure that our players get workers' compensation, I consider that something that we shouldn't have to do. When we have to sue the National Football League to make sure that doctors are treating our players as patients, I'm not sure that's something we should have to do. But I don't apologize for being aggressive when it comes to the health, safety, and financial interest of our players.
D. Smith, as far as you're concerned with the CBA, Cyrus Mary is a guy that's come up here who's both well-respected inside and outside of the league, that could be somebody to oppose you for the executive director position. Are you prepared to openly debate him as we approach March of 2018 with an open process on all the issues?
It sounds like you've been talking to Cyrus Mary. That's fantastic.
Well, no, D, I'm a former player that's just concerned about the league, D.
We have and I'm a person that's got the job of making sure that our players are safe, and we both take those things seriously. We have a process, and I think that if there's someone out there, like there has been before, who wants to run for the job, that's fine. I wake up every morning knowing what my job has to be, and look forward to it every morning.
It's D. Smith with us here on Mike and Mike. I just need to circle back quickly to the Colin Kaepernick issue because we didn't get quite as much out of it as I wanted to. So you say you're prepared to help him in whatever ways that you feel like you can. And it doesn't sound to me like you're saying he's asking for that help from the union right now. In what ways could you help him outside of the obvious? And what is there that can be done in this?
Yeah, look, I mean, the reality of any of these situations is, the union has always stood ready to help Colin in any way. And I went out very early, I think the day after he knelt last year, and made sure that he understood, that his camp understood, that our players understood what their rights were, that we were going to defend the rights of any player who wanted to make a free expression that didn't interrupt the game. We stand ready to do anything and to take every action that he wants us to take. I mean, our job as the union is to continue to work with the player and to make sure that we respect the player's wishes and work with his agents to accomplish their goals. And when it comes to potentially taking legal action, it's to advise them and to certainly support their position in any way. And, I mean, I'm being a little bit deliberately coy because I think it's important to respect the conversations that we have that are confidential and private between his representatives and the union. But there won't be a day, and there hasn't been a day, when this union hasn't stood up for its players, and will continue to do so. Understood.
Listen, D, most importantly, best of luck to you and your family as you send I can't even say it out loud. It makes me so sad thinking about it. Your kid's off to college.
Getting close for you too.
2 years away, and
yeah.
there's just no way I'm going to survive that experience. But one way or another, yeah.
You know what you love. You'll love the fact that by the time that day comes, that I know you've done a good job getting them ready for school, and you'll hug them, cry a little bit, but then root for them, right?
I guess, but
if you would have seen the look on his face just now, D,
I'll be so catatonic that I just can't imagine the experience one way or the other. But best of luck to you and your family, D. We'll talk again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, D.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Having great fun this morning with Booger McFarland in for Golick, and I will say this, that there is more reaction to our feelings about the movie Titanic than all the other things we've talked about put together today, which is remarkable. So let's get the thoughts on that and more from our friend Jeff Saturday, who joins us in studio to talk football and movies. How are you, Jeff?
Fantastic. How you guys doing?
Your thoughts on the movie Titanic?
I actually liked it a lot. It was
God.
I'm one of those. It
What
touched
about
me,
it
man.
did you like?
It touched me, man. It was a good one. You know, I mean, it was the ending scene that you guys are talking about. You guys are melodramatic about it. That girl, he wasn't going to sink his girl. Even if she said, get up on this thing, he didn't know if that thing could hold her. He didn't want her to be in that cold water. That was one of the most heroic things that man could have done for that lady. And listen, it's not a horrible death. He just went to sleep. It was real cold water. It happened fast. He went night. And look at his, I mean, think of the history now, the way it's been written for Leo, how good that thing turned out. I mean, I think it was ultimately selfish by you, Greeny, want to jump up on that thing with her. What if you knock her off? She freezes to death quick. You going to stay up on the debris? You're going to just slide off by yourself?
Here's the thing. The debris was like an acre, okay? I mean, you could have put...
It was pretty large.
You could have put like a you could have put the Brady Bunch on the debris that was floating in the Titanic. And they got to deal with this song, which I can't stand. And then, it's a horrible song. And then... think about what happened, all right? So Leo DiCaprio in this movie is broke. He's in steerage. Right. He's got no money whatsoever. She's from the bourgeoisie. 4 seconds after he sinks to a horrible death, she finds a whistle. She is rescued, and she has a diamond worth $1 billion in her pocket. Look at the life he was about to lead. Instead, he doesn't jump on board this huge piece of debris. I consider the whole thing ridiculous.
He was heroic, man. He was taking care of his lady. He wasn't, it was a different time. Green's jumping on there right now. Back then, lady was going to stay on the wood. He's going to float beside it. Probably didn't know she had the whistle. You're hoping she found it late. I hope she didn't know she had it. Come on,
the
Kate.
Whistle and the
let me just tell me you didn't know you had the whistle. The diamond at the time is probably worth $5. Then it becomes worth $1 billion. She doesn't know.
I've learned from this movie, though, the level of Greeny and I's relationship, because Greeny said that he likes me now. He doesn't love me, because if he loved me, he would give me the debris. Like, he wouldn't just share it with me. He'd give it to me.
That's factual.
Exactly. Thank you.
That's factual.
Thank you.
There's like 3 people I would give the debris to.
And they're all at your house. Other than that, that's it. No chance for the rest of them.
All right. It's not what I meant, but it's funnier that way. Okay. Jeff Saturday is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. You are aware, obviously, that we've been sitting in here talking a lot about the current collective bargaining agreement under which the NFL players and owners are operating. And part of that is because we had D. Smith on earlier this morning. And you were in there. You were one of the leaders of the players in that. So can you share with us, I heard you talking a little bit to Booger about it, and I said, you know what, let's do this on the air.
Sure.
The circumstances under which, because I think people sometimes, even I had forgotten one detail, the circumstances under which this document was actually bargained.
Right. And so, I heard part of what Boogs was saying and completely respect it, right? Former player, love what he did in the game. In that situation, we were locked out. So, when you talk about what you gave back, you weren't giving back anything. You're starting from zero. When they blew the deal up as a whole, there was not a starting point, and I walked with Gene for many years in that same room. I understand what we had. We knew we were going to go backwards.
Correct.
You knew that. I knew. We all knew that. Yep. There was no surprise in that. The expectations of the whole deal being blown up and being locked out was more problematic than we expected. And so I think from the side of what did we get, what did we not get, the thing we knew we had to focus on, we knew we were going to give back money.
Right.
There was no doubt about that. The amount of money we wanted to try to, lessen to the greatest degree we could because we all want to get paid.
Correct.
We also knew that for the first couple years of the deal, it was going to have to be really flat, right? All of those things, those were all facts we knew we were going to have to manage. The protection of our players was the biggest fact that we needed to address. Every former player, and I can tell you, of the thousands that I've met in my career, the biggest thing they talk about is health and safety of what happened to them. Now, we looked at it 2 different ways. We tried to get lifetime insurance. We couldn't. This was not an owners players thing. This was no one would insure us at that level, right? We don't know what future medical of a football player is going to be, right? I mean, think about it. We weren't even talking about CTE. We weren't talking about any of those things at that time. But even then, people didn't want to do it. So we started the Upshaw Health Savings Account, right? So not only do you get the 5 years once you're done, now you have a health savings account that we're hoping will get guys from whatever year they retire as deep in, or at least until they can find a second career if they're guys who haven't played very long in the game. So from the health and safety perspective, if we can take away two-a-days, if we can think about guys long-term where their wives aren't having to deal or their families aren't having to deal with these, tragic events that may happen in their life later on in their life, what can we do to make the extension of someone's life better? So that was the direction we were headed. As far as the money side goes, it's much more difficult than you think. I think when we're on air, we can simplify this and go, well, we took less. But here's the deal. My phone never stopped ringing from guys wanting to get back on the field. Hey, mama says I'm not going to stand this thing out. You know what I mean? I can't sit here. My deal is up. I got more calls from guys who were under the franchise tag. I mean, these dudes were already paid talking about, I got to get back to work. We have to get this thing done. And so the amount of pressure coming from different angles, there is a lot going on. Now, the situation now could be very different because we've had almost 10 years for guys to prepare of, hey, this is an expectation for the owners. At the time, I'll be very frank, I thought we thought there was an opportunity. I didn't think we'd ever thought it would get there. So the lockout changed the dynamics of this negotiation. And to your point, and Greeny, I know someone said it is a very difficult negotiation when everybody's holding the cards across. But I will say, if players stand together and stand strong, you have a strong shot. When guys start to peel off, and you mentioned 3 great ones, right? And that's what happens. Guys start getting peeled away, or someone else gets to them or has conversations with them. And the truth of the matter is the blue-collar guys like myself, right, the guys who come in undrafted or, 6-round draft picks, all that kind of stuff, those guys are usually the guys who lock together. Mm-hmm. It's the top end guys who get picked off because someone else is offering them a case of cash, and they'll take it, man. I mean, they'll walk up, and we have seen it happen time and time again. So I appreciate the frustration of where players feel like it is financially. I will also say the projections that we made 10 years ago or however long, 8 years ago, they have surpassed what we thought. When I see centers making $10 million a year, I wish Mama would have held on a little longer. I'd have been born later, right? I mean, that's real, right? You have the same feeling. Exactly. Every player, that's always the thought. Every player gets it. So, I'm fired up for these guys for what they're getting. We're still striving to make gains in other areas. I do think health and safety, though, for us had to be first and foremost. And I'm proud of that part. Never again will there be a 2-a-day, protecting guys, taking shots off the head. I know fans get upset. It's an easy cupcake league, all that kind of stuff. Listen, you don't know me now, right? You don't know me at 42 years old when my wife and my children have to deal with who I am. I don't feel sorry for fans. I don't feel sorry for anybody, man. Like, I gave my best effort to this game. I'm proud I would do it all again. But if I can limit or reduce the amount of risk that players take, I will do it every time. And this goes to coaches, GMs, owners, to the detriment of our game. Right. I don't feel it does not bother me a bit when people go, man, our game, even the Bill Pullins I love them, right? Our game is going to deteriorate. I'm fine with that because fans still tune in. Right. They still love it. It's still the greatest game in our country, and it will stay that way, but we have to protect our guys.
Here's the thing I'll say, Jeff. From a player standpoint, when you cut out 2-a-days, you're basically talking – you could sum it up 20 practices during training camp if you're cutting out 2-a-days. So I look at that.
Hold on, we're not done there now.
I understand.
Yeah, we get in the regular season, we got one day a week we can hit, and it's a limited amount of time during the week.
Correct. And then I look at the season starting later, from March to April, and I look at all the things that were negotiated, and you compare that and you ask yourself, was it worth it from a monetary standpoint? Okay, then I look at the leadership, and oftentimes, like the one question I wanted to ask D. Smith that I didn't get a chance to ask him, and you're the perfect person. When you're in a position of leadership, especially leader of players, is your job to listen to the players and do what the players want when you talk about the guys are calling and say, let's go to work? Right. Or is your job to advise them knowing that the greater good is something they can't see?
Right.
And to me, that's the tricky issue because I thought Gene did a great job of listening, but he advised the players, this is what we need to do. Yeah. Not what we should, maybe what we should, but this is what we need to do. And I just wonder.
Let me address that. Okay. That's a great question. The dynamic is different because Gene passes away.
Yes.
D does not have the same amount of time to go get to know guys. So the level of credibility that D had at the moment was significantly different than what Gene, right? Gene had street credibility with all of us.
Yes.
Not only had he played, he had built this union, he had done so many different things. Where D was coming from, he was making those comments you're saying. He was advising guys. Guys didn't have that same trust level yet for what was this going to look like. Because remember, we had all just picked D through the process.
Yes.
All of us had gone through the executive committee. We had vetted so many different people. We had so many different people going in front of the union, all of those things. But from where D was, he was making recommendations. Not everyone was taken. And I'll be very frank. I had guys call, especially the Steelers, right?
Yes.
Charlie Batches. Hey, man, we should hold this up for Roger Goodell. Hey, man, I'm telling you right now, every call I got was, I don't care about Roger Goodell. I'm not ever going to be in Roger Goodell's office. Roger Goodell will never know my name. Do not hold this deal up for Roger Goodell. If it takes 15 guys out, tell those guys to clean it up. But my wife, my kids don't need to suffer. Now, when you look at the big picture, it becomes more complicated in the afterthought, right? We got 2020, right?
Yeah.
But as you looked at it at the time, those are the decisions guys are making on a moment, and it's not as easy. When you look back, it's much easier than when you're in the mix of it.
I have to take a quick break. Can you stay? I don't want to ask you a lot, but you probably have to do Sports Center. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll
I'm
come
good.
back.
Yep.
Jeff will either be with us or he won't as we continue next.
That's a good observation.
There you go. Good job, Greeny.
So
Either on or off.
That's the level of clarity you can expect every morning here on Mike and Mike. But
The best of Mike and Mike.
Jeff was able to stay with us here, which we really appreciate. He'll be on Sports Center at the top of the hour, so you're going to run. So please don't be late because then I'll get in trouble. Was there anything in this discussion that you felt you wanted to get in that we didn't? I just want to make sure that it's clear that everything, because a lot of people criticize this deal, and you were sitting in that room.
Sure.
Is there anything you feel we didn't get to?
No, probably a couple more. The other thing I would say is one thing that we saw owners doing, and this was especially true with the Panthers at the time, where they just fire everybody, right? They keep their salary so low, all the vets have to go, it's all those kind of things, is forcing teams for their cash cap to be above that 90% number. And so as it rolls and goes, forcing teams to stay in so that, because we know you can't be drafted, for a guy like you have no chance of where you're being drafted. So you get drafted to a team that they're going to keep everything low for however many years, right. It's hurting those guys. So balancing that, making sure those guys got in there, I think was very beneficial because we did see that teams would go through, and I know people talk about all the time, are the Jets tanking, that kind of conversation. For whatever it is, whether they are or not, you want to make sure the guys on that team are maxing out the amount of money they can make and guys aren't getting stiffed because they're on a team that's going through that type of cycle. The other thing I would say is, and I know people have an issue with it wherever you fall, is the top 10 of the rookie class. And I still think that was the best way of putting more money back into the locker room.
Agreed.
And I get that goes to quarterbacks majority. I mean, we understand that's the business, right? We're never going to fight that part of the business, but it at least has pushed more money down into our locker rooms for guys who may never pan out.
Right.
May pan out, and if you do, man, go get paid that second one. But I think for me, those are two things I thought we did well on.
So let's push this forward because we've talked a lot about things that have happened in the past. As we go forward, D. Smith is talking about a potential lockout in 2021. Talking about that now seems a little just something about
early.
that doesn't. It's early.
It's early.
What would you like to see if you were in charge? What would you like to see from a player standpoint change from the current CBA to one that we negotiate coming forward?
Oh man, that's a good question. So I would say from our perspective, when you begin to build all these stadiums in LA, get a larger share of that portion, right? So as you look at it, the way the buckets or the way the money's kind of broken down, TV money, that's the easiest money to grab, right? We all know that. Whatever that money is, keep your share wherever that is, and that's always going to be more player than owner. But that stadium type money, that's big money. And every time you upgrade, every time you say, sell PSLs, all those, that players get a larger share of that money. Because what we have noticed now is more teams are willing to move and change. You're seeing cities and taxpayer dollars go into that. It's requiring less of ownership, right? So let's get in on that too, right? If it's easy money, let's make sure we're getting it too, right? I mean, and that, I think for me, that would be the largest thing I would see, to get into the minutia of all the rules, but from a pie point of view, and how do we make more money from the player side? I like that. I think that'd be a good one.
My last question would be, it feels with a lot of the rhetoric on both sides right now, particularly that surrounded the Zeke Elliott situation and then some of the other things, as though this relationship, one way or another, has never been more toxic. Does that really matter? When they actually get into a room to start negotiating a contract, will that make any difference, and if so, how?
I don't think it makes a difference in the negotiation. I think it makes a difference in quote-unquote peacetime that we're supposed to be in now. Right. I'd like to see D and Goodell, solve more issues that would not have to go back to be collectively bargained. I mean, the problem now is, and it's like most in our country, right? Everybody's so polar opposite on issues. Nobody's understanding. If we could meet in the middle, we could avoid so much of this. And so as you're seeing what's happening with them, that would be the thing that I would hope. Once negotiations start, we all know lawyers are in the room, owners, Goodell will watch. Those owners are very hands-on when it comes down to negotiating, and players will be too. So I don't think that relationship will make nearly the impact that people think. It's in this time where we could get things done for the betterment of our game that things should be happening.
All right, we have to let Jeff go. He'll be on SportsCenter off the top of the hour. I need you to run over there again.
I will sprint. I will
get yelled at if you were late.
Yeah,
but thank you very much.
I ain't sprinting.
This was really good. Really good insight
Appreciate
into
you
this
guys.
from
Let me do
someone
it.
who
Thanks
was
so
there.
much.
Thank you very much. Here we are. Those kind of really important discussions taking place here this morning with Booger McFarland in for Golic. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. We're going live to Vegas in a second. Stephen A's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, getting set to do First Take and everything else out there with the coverage of the fight. And the relationship he has with Floyd. So we'll get perspective from him. We'll get perspective on the betting angle from old friend Brent Musburger as well as we continue. And we've started kind of a good little, like Seinfeld was very big on this all the time. They'd create little phrases that you would become part of the vernacular. I do think that this is a pretty good one. How many people would you share your debris with? If you're Kate Winslet, she wouldn't share the debris with Leonardo DiCaprio. She didn't love him that much.
Right.
In Titanic, how many people would you say, come on, get up here onto this debris, even if it means me falling off, taking that chance? It's a pretty limited list of people you love that much.
I think the golf instructor has to be there.
I agree.
Obviously, wife, daughter, son.
Right.
I have a brother.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Your relationship with him is being assessed in your mind right now very closely, isn't it?
I'm comparing him and my sister both to the golf instructor.
No. The golf instructor comes before that.
Well, I mean, you would think, right?
Oh, for sure.
Well, and plus, I can't bring brother and sister. I only have one spot.
Not enough room. There's not enough debris for two people.
Exactly. So I think you would take the golf instructor, and brother and sister would probably.
Because there's only one of him.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, let's get Stephen A. into this conversation and steer us out of the trouble that we're probably getting ourselves into, as he is in Vegas again for coverage of McGregor and Mayweather and Stephen A. With a crowd behind him, as we can see on ESPN2. Good morning, Stephen A.
What's going on, Mike? Booger.
What's up, man?
Going on?
Got your own cheering section.
What's going on, fellas? Well, I am here. It is Vegas. I mean, if you're going to be in Vegas, be in Vegas.
I love it. All right, so listen, let's start with this because we're trying to figure out what we think is going to happen. And I don't know Floyd Mayweather, and you do. He doesn't strike me as the kind of person who wants to play games here and put on a show. He can talk about wanting to put on a show because people were disappointed with the Pacquiao fight. He strikes me as a guy who is going to make sure that he wins in whatever the most direct way that is possible. And if your colleague there, Max Kellerman, is right, and Floyd can put him away pretty much any time he wants to, I feel like he will do so early. Is that your expectation?
That's my expectations. I'm predicting that it'll probably go 5 or 6 rounds. Floyd will embarrass him. He will destroy him. He will humiliate him because he's such a superior boxer. I just refuse to believe that one of the greatest boxers ever, arguably the greatest defensive fighter we have ever seen, is going to get in a ring with somebody that's never boxed professionally in his life and all of a sudden is going to have a hard time. I do, unlike my man Max Kellerman, give Conor McGregor a 1% chance, which is a puncher's chance. I think anybody that has power in both hands in a pugilistic sport where one shot to the jaw can end a night, you have to take that into consideration. These are human beings we're talking about here. Anything could happen. You could wake up with an upset stomach. You could wake up with a headache, a toothache, for crying out loud. Something could happen. It will take that kind of a miracle and all things aligning correctly in order for Conor McGregor to win this fight. But that's a 1% chance because that's just human instinct. But by and large, anybody with sense should expect that Floyd Mayweather is not only going to win, but win convincingly. And if the fists are still brittle, even though he hasn't fought in the last 2 years, and he's still unable to knock out Conor McGregor, I do believe that he will, at the very least, embarrass him in terms of giving him a boxing lesson. I've seen Floyd in the ring against professionals where guys would swing at him, and he'd literally tap them on the shoulder and say, look, I'm behind you. I'm not there. This is what he does. This is how brilliant he is as a defensive wizard. I mean, he talks to announcers at ringside in the middle of a fight. He fought a guy by the name of Saul Canelo Alvarez, who's absolutely sensational. The only loss on his resume is to Floyd Money Mayweather, although I suspect he will lose to Triple G on September 16th. And this is a guy that Floyd literally took to class, took to school. He was a professor in that ring, and it was so bad that Canelo got to a point where he was literally scared to throw punches because he was embarrassed from missing so much. Floyd can do that to you. So even in the event that he doesn't have the knockout power to take a Conor McGregor out, where some people think that he will, I do believe that he clearly has the ability to embarrass this guy and give him a boxing lesson. And at the very least, I suspect that. But I do believe that a knockout ultimately will ensue simply because Conor McGregor isn't accustomed to being in a ring with somebody as brilliant as this guy.
Stephen, I'm curious to what happens after this fight. In the wee hours of Sunday morning when this fight is over, do you think we will ever see either of these guys in a boxing ring again?
No, I think Conor McGregor will go back to the UFC because I think the money to be made in boxing won't be there for him. He'll go back to the UFC. He'll do what he does on that level. I think in the case of Floyd Money Mayweather, he'll retire. I believe him when he says that simply because I've spoken to his father. I've spoken to his manager, business manager, Leonard Ellaby, who will be on the show today on First Take. And these are individuals who know him intimately. And plus, Floyd Money Mayweather has told me that himself. Even though he hasn't been subjected to an extreme amount of punishment compared to most other boxers, he's been doing this all his life. He's been fighting professionally for over 20 years. And he believes that he's absorbed enough punishment. And to some degree, he is. You just see that there has been some level of dissipation in terms of his skill. Not to the level of a Manny Pacquiao, but definitely we've seen some slippage. And that's why Floyd Money Mayweather got out of the game to some degree when he did. You don't see him talking about fighting Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence Jr. or Keith Thurman or somebody like that, because that's when you recognize that your time has come and it's time for you to walk away. And he's all about the business of making money without getting hurt, because clearly boxing doesn't have, a representation in terms of the boxers having a fighters association or anything like that. And so it's every man for themselves. And Floyd is all about making the money and being as safe as he possibly can be while doing so.
Mike and Stephen A. So I heard Teddy Atlas bringing this up, and none of the three of us in this discussion think there's almost any chance of it happening. But in the extraordinarily unlikely event that Conor McGregor wins this fight, what would it actually mean to the sport of boxing?
It will be a devastating blow. A very devastating blow as far as I'm concerned. And here's why. You're 49-0, universally recognized as one of the greatest ever. And a novice who's never fought professionally stepped into a boxing ring and beat you. If that happened, it discredits the sport of boxing. I don't think people are worried per se, but I think everybody recognizes that that's something that's simply not good for the sport. It would be great for the UFC. It would be great for the UFC, not just because of of their stature, but also the ability for fighters to move on over to the sport of boxing and make some noise. It would open up a bevy of opportunities for other fighters to enter the sport of boxing and do some of the things that they're capable of doing. But it would definitely put a stain on the sport, because it would give the impression that it doesn't require but so much to step in the ring and take one of these guys out. Because if the greatest defensive fighter, arguably, who ever lived, goes into a ring against Conor McGregor and gets put to sleep, we've got a problem on our hands. And more importantly, Floyd Money Mayweather will have walked away from the sport unless he decides to come back for a rematch and get more money. And it just wouldn't be something that's good for the sport. I mean, when you think about boxing right now, let's call this what it is. This is a great exhibition. We expect it to be an exhibition primarily on the part of Floyd Money Mayweather. It's Conor McGregor and Floyd Money Mayweather in terms of the hype and the introduction, and them even walking into the ring is going to be incredibly exciting. But once the fight actually starts, we all expect a mismatch. The fight that we're really, really looking forward to is Triple G versus Canelo, because that's a fight. That could be the fight of the decade, for crying out loud. But at the same time, you cannot have a guy the stature of Floyd Money Mayweather losing to somebody who's never fought professionally. That would be extremely embarrassing and an incredible stain on the sport of boxing if that happened.
So, Stephen A., with that being said, let's say Floyd wins and he gets to 50-0, beating somebody that's never fought professionally. Are you okay with that being his 50th win and taking the place of Marciano as far as being 50-0?
Nope. But I'm on the record. This ain't 50-0 to me. I don't give a damn what anybody says. Everybody can pick it. Everybody's got the right to their opinions. And, others will sit up there and say, the Chael Sonnens of the world will sit up there and say, hey, I counted this 50-0. Teddy Atlas says there's an asterisk that would be attached to it. I'm not even going that far. It's not 50-0 to me. You did not fight a professional boxer. You did not fight somebody who went through the terrain of boxing and put in that work and went through opponent after opponents to earn the right to be in the ring with you. This is an exhibition. We can appreciate it. I hear my man Max talking about it's licensed by the Nevada State Athletic Commission and all of that other stuff. Fine. Y'all feel the way that y'all feel. It ain't 50-0 to me. Not when Pacquiao is still out there. Not when Terrence Crawford is out there, even though he's a junior welterweight at 140 pounds and would have to move up. Not when a Keith Thurman is out there. Not when an Errol Spence Jr., my favorite, is out there. When you've got these kind of fighters out there, even with Canelo Alvarez, because he's moved up and being a middleweight and fighting Triple G, but Floyd could have fought him at 154. That's what he's doing for this fight. That hasn't happened. A rematch with that hasn't happened. Too many fights are out there from professional boxers who've put in the work and have earned the right to be in the ring with a quality fighter like Floyd Money Mayweather. I am not going to count 50-0 for you beating some guy that never fought as a boxer in his career. Conor McGregor is fantastic. He's great. I'm not casting any aspersions on him whatsoever as a fighter. But this is boxing. And as a boxer, he did not earn the right to be in the ring with Floyd Money Mayweather. This is clearly an exhibition, and I'm going to treat it like that. I will never look at Floyd Money Mayweather as 50-0 because he beat Conor McGregor. That ain't happening this way.
Stephen A. is ready to go. The crowd is ready to go. Vegas is ready to go. First Take starts 10 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN. Thank you so much, Steve. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Steve.
No problem. Y'all take it easy.
Stephen A. Smith and Max and Molly and company will be out there, with their show ready to go. Again, 10 o'clock every morning on ESPN. I actually am somewhat inclined to agree with that I would not. I brought up this. Yes, I brought this up yesterday, right. and I made my initial analogy was not a good one, which is if Hank Aaron's 715th home run, if they had taken someone out of the stands and let them pitch, would it have counted as would that be the same? That was a bad analogy. So we were working to try and find a good analogy. Right. And the best analogy I think we came up with was this would be like a decathlete competing in one of the individual disciplines with the very best in the world. Mm-hmm. So a decathlete, whoever wins the gold medal in the decathlon, can do all 10 of these things ridiculously well, and maybe is the best individual athlete in the world. But if you put that guy in just the javelin throw against the best javelin throwers in the world, none of whom could run 1,500 meters, he probably wouldn't win that, right? So that's kind of what this is. Conor McGregor is a fighter. He can do a lot of different kinds of fighting, and probably all of them pretty well by normal human standards. But now you're putting him into a ring to box against the guy who just is a boxing specialist. So I actually would feel the same way. I don't like the idea that Marciano will no longer have even a share of that with this fight against the guy who is not really a boxer.
Well, I disagree with both you and Stephen, and here's what I'll say. If we go back and look at the 49 victories that Floyd Mayweather has, I'm pretty sure he's fought a bum somewhere in there. Somebody that didn't deserve to be in the ring with him, somebody that was an easy win, somebody that he outclassed from the moment he signed his name on the contract. So what's the difference between that and this?
There is a difference. You're 100% right. There was the tomato cans, and we looked up some of the names yesterday, and there were some guys he fought that never won a fight. But there were two things. One, they were all professional boxers. It was not sort of the mockery of it that this is.
But they were terrible.
A licensed mockery. Well, I mean, they some of them I'm sure were terrible, but they were terrible within the confines of the sport. And the other part of it is this is the 50th. It would have felt different if this fight made Mayweather 3-0 and then he won 47 more fights.
Yeah.
But there's something about this being the one that breaks the tie that just doesn't sit well. I recognize doesn't sit well, doesn't hold up in a court of law. I understand you can't say, excuse me, Your Honor, that doesn't sit well. I understand that, but we're not being held to that standard in this conversation. So there was just something about this being the 50th fight that makes it different for me.
Yeah, and then when you sit back and you look at Tom Brady's 5 rings and you total, and I'm probably going to do as poor a job of an analogy as you did yesterday, but when you look at Brady's 5 rings, he got like the 5th one is no more important than the first one. Like he still has 5.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at 50-0. 50 is no more important than 1 or 2 or 7, wherever you look at it. It's still part of the totality of the entire number. And so what I would say is, yes, I'm going to recognize it as 50-0 because there's the slightest little chance that Mayweather, who's 40 years old right now, he's older than I am, and he's boxing, slips a little bit. Doesn't perform the way we're used to Floyd Mayweather performing. The quickness isn't there. The elite athleticism isn't there. And what if he gets caught? There's that chance. And because there's that chance, because there's an opportunity for him to lose, I think you have to give him credit for winning.
All right. We're Mike and Mike. Booger McFarland is here. He's wrong about this, but I love him anyway. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests like Stephen A. and Brent Musburger on the way and a whole lot more appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Guys, let's do next question here. We're moving some things around. Let's do next question as we work our way through a variety of different topics. And next question with us here on Mike and Mike is brought to you by Indeed.com. Doesn't usually happen to me that way, but I had a little trouble finding it on my piece of paper. Next question brought to you by Indeed.com. Post your next job opening on the world's #1 job site. And the very first question, which they're telling me to skip, but I want to do it because I want us on the record. True or false, if Mayweather beats McGregor, his official boxing record should be 50-0. I will say, because it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, I will have to say true. But I do believe it should be understood. And whenever you talk about this record, it should be pointed out that the 50th fight was not what anyone in their right minds would consider to be a boxing test.
You just spent 3 minutes arguing against yourself then.
Well, now you know why I've been in therapy for 30 years, because I have conflicting opinions that I feel very strongly about. I feel very strongly
about both of them.
No, my point is, I understand it's going to go down. The fight is sanctioned. He's going to be 50-0. His record is going to be 50-0. But when people talk about the record, for whomever it was that had the best undefeated record in boxing history, I do not believe Marciano should just be forgotten as a result of that.
Well, he shouldn't be forgotten, but he should move over and let Floyd be #1. So I'm going true with that one.
Next question. Who will start the most games at quarterback for the Jaguars this season? Everyone in London wants to know.
I think it has to be Blake Bortles, and here's why. At some point, you have to be sure that you know what Blake Bortles is. We've seen a pretty good season from Blake Bortles. We've seen a terrible season from Blake Bortles. And now we're seeing a preseason where he's been indifferent. Okay, the Jaguars, I don't think are in any danger of firing their coach year 1. Okay, Doug Marrone, who's the coach. And so now, why don't you play Blake Bortles, and at least you know you've given him every opportunity with a stable running back, with Fournette in the backfield, to have somebody that can take the pressure off of him. He has receivers. You have a good tight end. Put Fournette behind him. Give him an opportunity. Let's not make a snapshot judgment over a preseason game where he looked terrible. I would give the job to Blake Bortles and see what he has this year.
Bortles has what people will remember as the RG3 poison pill in his contract. If he gets hurt this year, they owe him $19 million next year. So I think maybe they play him a little bit early and they figure out they're moving on from him. This is a big draft with a lot of quarterbacks in it. I don't think Bortles winds up playing that many games. I will go with Chad Henne. Next question. Either, neither, or both LeBron James and Isaiah Thomas on the Cavaliers in 2019. Either, neither, or both.
I think they both are still there. LeBron James is from Akron. He's built a monstrosity of a mansion there. His wife loves being there. His kids loves being there. His mind, like he always talks about showing his family where he grew up at. And he's won a championship there. He just wants to have some help. The only reason why LeBron James hasn't committed is because he wants to keep his options open and make sure that management knows that you have to continue to work to surround me with a good team. I think IT starts that. I think the Brooklyn Nets 2018 pick, if it's number 1 overall, they can get a good player. That helps. And so I think both of them will still be there. I do not think, and I'm on record as saying this, I do not think they give IT max money. There's no way I'm giving a 5'9" guy max money. I just don't think you can. He's a good player, had a very good season. I just don't think he's one of the top 20 players in this league.
No. Well, that's a very hard thing to say. He certainly was last year.
He was last year. He was.
But I agree they won't give him that. And as a consequence, I don't believe he'll be there. And listen, where there's smoke, there's fire. Everybody who was in the know says LeBron's going to be gone. So I'm going to go with neither. I don't believe LeBron or Isaiah Thomas will be on the Cavs in 2019. Next question. DeShone Kizer is projected to start for the Browns. Which rookie quarterback do you believe will start a game next?
Ooh.
You got Trubisky. You got Watson. Who am I forgetting? Oh, Patrick Mahomes.
I would say Trubisky. The fact that Mike Glennon is already having flashback nightmares to what happened to him in Tampa, and he's openly speaking about that. He's reading the tea leaves on the wall. Trubisky, we're such prisoners of the moment. Trubisky came out. He looked phenomenal in the preseason in a very vanilla offense. And at some point, I think the Bears are going to say, you know what, let's start the clock ticking now. Even if he's terrible this year, at least we get him some experience. That way down the road, he can be a more experienced quarterback, and we know what we have.
And I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson because of who he's playing behind, because of Bill O'Brien's history of changing quarterbacks all the time, and because he's on a team with expectations. Normally you would think that would work against a rookie quarterback. Right. But in this case, if Savage doesn't play well, then I think that O'Brien will be pretty quick to make a change, whereas if Glennon doesn't play well, the Bears, I think, will be cautious with Trubisky. His long-term development is their primary concern and responsibility. In the case of Houston, winning the Super Bowl this year is. And if they decide they have a better chance of winning it with the rookie, and he's the only one that would fall in that category, I think they go that way. I'm a little surprised that Watson didn't get that job, and I believe he will be the starting quarterback by midseason.
Houston sort of reminds you of Dallas, team that has expectations to go deep into the postseason. Now, whether it's injury or not, you put the rookie quarterback in. I think what happened in Dallas may play some role in Houston. Hey, we got a defense that's played the Patriots very well, who's our chief competitor in the AFC. So I agree with you. It could be Watson. I think based on what I'm hearing, based on what we see now, Trubisky may get the nod sooner than Watson will.
So let me ask it to you this way. And we'll make this brought to you by DraftKings. Try Daily Fantasy for free at DraftKings. Use the code Mike right now at DraftKings.com. If I told you you could have any one of the rookie quarterbacks on your fantasy team, which one do you take?
Deshaun Watson.
Including Kizer?
Yes, including Kizer. I'm taking Deshaun Watson. Greeny, it's something about been there and done that. I've watched this young man against the baddest defense in the land 2 years in a row, and he shredded them. Nick Saban is an NFL-type defensive coordinator who happens to be the coach at Alabama. And I saw Deshaun Watson do what he did to Saban's defense. And Saban openly said before last season, along with Cam Newton, there's only been a couple guys that he's feared. One was Newton, and Deshaun Watson was that guy last year. So I'm taking Watson because I've seen him do it against the best.
I will, too. Again, he has to be on the field in order to be valuable to your fantasy team. I think he will get on the field.
The best of Mike and Mike.
In some ways, no one wanted to see, and in other ways, I feel like we've been waiting our entire lives to see with McGregor and Mayweather. And joining us now is the legendary Brent Musburger, who is there in Vegas now with the Vegas Stats and Information Network and his show, My Guys in the Desert. Airs 5 times a week on the Vegas Stats and Information Network and VSIN. It's available at VSIN.com and on SiriusXM Channel 204. It's been a long time. How are you this morning, Brent?
Hey, I'm Greg Greeny. You got the booger with you, man. You got one of the guys from the SEC Network. He's riding shotgun with you, lad. He's right there.
Good to talk to you, Brett.
Good to hear your voice. So help us put this in perspective. We'll get to the gambling element of it in a moment, but you, of course, have covered sports for an extraordinarily long time, as well as anybody ever did, and you've kind of seen it all and done it all. How do we put into perspective what it is that's going to happen in Las Vegas tomorrow night?
This is the boxing version of Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs, my friend. Okay? Listen, I've got great respect for the Irishman. He's a tough kid. He came from a tough neighborhood in Dublin. God bless him. He's one of the kings of the cage. He has absolutely no chance whatsoever to beat money in a boxing match. Now, Can he win this fight? Yeah, absolutely. He's got a good left hand. If he can slip it through, if he can stun Mayweather early, he could go. Greeny, I am fascinated by how many people are interested. I mean, there are people putting down heavy money on this fight. This is going to be the most heavily bet fight in the history of Nevada. And that, I will go way back with Muhammad Ali when he lost out here to Leon Spinks. We did that on CBS, and the old fight doctor, Ferdy Pacheco, was there. Nobody saw that coming. Can an upset happen? Anything can always happen in the fight game. There's no question about that. But when this was posted before it became a reality, Jimmy Vaccaro down at the South Point put up 27-1 on Money Mayweather to win that fight if it was ever booked. Now, my goodness, it went down to around 5-1. I mean, it's incredible to me how many people walked up to the counter and bet their hard-earned money on McGregor. Listen, Money is not a popular champion. Let's be perfectly honest. There are two versions of Money. You know, he lives here in Las Vegas. The other day, I accidentally ran into his mother. She was picking up a credential. When they're not promoting and selling tickets, it's a wonderful family out here, and Mayweather has been very good to the community. His last night, he was back down at his club, a gentleman's club, if we can call it that, and he stays up to about 4 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, but he gets ready for fights that way, and he's the best defensive fighter. Booger knows this. He knows how good a defensive fighter Mayweather is. Money is money. That's what I call him this week. I mean, he's pure gold, let me tell you that.
Brent, what does it mean for the layperson when the overwhelming number of bets, as far as the amount of bets, are on McGregor, but the majority of the money, the overwhelming majority of the money, is on Mayweather? So this is a fastball right down your alley. What does that mean?
They see that plus 340, plus 380. You put $100 down on McGregor, and you're going to get $300 to $400 back. So the bettor who likes to bet the $20 or the $100 or even up to the $1,000, the biggest bet that I know of that was made on, and I'm sure that some of the fellows around all the casinos have seen larger perhaps, but I saw somebody bet $40,000 on McGregor. But I know a bettor in this town who has bet about $1.5 million. He's scattered his shots around town, and he's come back on Mayweather for $1.5 million. So the big money in this town is solidly on Mayweather. But the guys who look for a price and think that maybe McGregor can get the – and like I say, Money is not popular with everybody. I mean, there are people out there who see him as a loudmouth braggadocio. The old-timers, maybe they don't like the fact that I heard you agree talking about the Marciano record. There's still some old folks out there. It's like there are some people out there who still recognize Roger Maris as a home run champion because we came through the steroid era. And now there are people saying this is a setup. He's fighting a nobody. Mayweather's going to get the record, blah, 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 blah. And onward you go. But they're putting their cash up, and this will be the most heavily bet fight in the history of Nevada, which is just amazing to me, to tell you the truth.
And one final thought, again, Brent Musburger from the Vegas Stats and Information Network, and a very good Twitter follow if you're interested in gambling as well. Brent, I asked this question to Stephen A., and I'll ask it to you as well. None of us in this conversation think there's almost any chance this will happen. But in the extremely unlikely event that Conor McGregor wins, what would it mean for and what would it do to the sport of boxing?
Rematch. That's what it would mean. They'd come back again if that was to happen. You know, the one thing that you always have to be careful of if you're betting or following sport, especially boxing, is you have to be careful of that rematch idea. That, hey, they can come back here and do this all over again, and they can make even more money the next time out. However, Greeny, to me, it's like saying you can always bet on the NFL, the NBA, or Major League Baseball. You don't have to worry about the fix because there's not enough money in the world because of the salaries that these guys are paid in this particular area at the professional level. All right? So you've always had that little concern in the back of your head whenever you bet a boxing match. Hey, is there going to be a rematch? In Mayweather's case, I'm saying when he walks in 49-0, you're going to get a fair deal. He wants that 50-0. He doesn't care that you and I are going to say, hey, yeah, but he got his 50th against a guy who had never boxed in his life. Yeah, he's a great fighter, great UFC champion. McGregor's a killer when he gets you down. But in this instance, and I know the Mayweathers, okay, and I was with him when he was inducted into the Southern Nevada Hall of Fame recently. Very humble. He's a totally different person when he's not selling tickets, when he's not promoting a fight. This guy, Money Mayweather, wants this fight badly. He wants the 50-0 regardless of any controversy. He's not concerned about a rematch. He's 40 years old, so he's near the end. And if this is it, if this is the final time we get to see him, so be it. I don't, because I'm in Nevada and we look at things a little bit differently, we don't bet on propositions like, is Mayweather a better champion than Marciano? You can't bet on things like that. But you can bet on Mayweather versus McGregor, and that's what everybody wants to do this week. So, boxing has suffered greatly over the last decade or so, and that's because the heavyweight division went down. It isn't what it was, Greeny, when I came up. When I was a youngster coming out of the Second World War, Joe Louis was the greatest champion and a wonderful, wonderful boxer. And we went on from there. We went through the Marciano era. And even Tyson. Tyson was a killer in his prime. And so it will always be alive. It's not going to be as big. The UFC has taken over with the younger generation. I've never been an aficionado of it, but so be it. Doesn't mean a thing. I mean, I understand it. I get why people like it, and it'll go on. It'll always be there. There will always be a promotion of someone. These two guys have promoted well. Mayweather and McGregor, they've done the act. They've sold us. The pay-per-view is going to be up around 4 million. 4 million now. Just get a little computer out there, guys, and take 4 million times $100. You only have to just add a couple of zeros. You can see how much money is going to be made on this.
That's math even I can do. He's Brent Musburger, Vegas Stats and Information Network. Enjoy the weekend, Brent. Great to hear your voice.
Thanks, Brent.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Good to hear from you, Booger, my man.
Always, buddy.